Hello YouTube. I have in front of you a JG AK47 Tactical with a few modifications. It's from one of my Airsoft teammates. He has brought it to me today because he needs a spring downgrade. It's currently shooting, he told me, low 400s, which is too hot for his current sight. I believe the limit's 400 for a full auto where he plays. So he's asked me to downgrade the spring in this gun, and also we'll be doing some hop-up work to get a more consistent FPS out of it. So before we take the gun apart, we have to establish a baseline. So let's take it over to the chrono to see what it's shooting with 0.2 gram BBs. Okay, here we are at the chrono. I have 0.20 premium grade BBs loaded up. We have our safety goggles on. Let's see what they're chronoing at. Alright, so it looks like we're hovering around 435 to 445. Okay, so as we can see, shooting in the low 400s, much too hot for the field, especially because it has a full auto selector switch in here. Some of the fields allow up to 450 with single auto only, and that has to either be mechanically or electrically controlled. So for this one, we're going to start by disassembling the body first. We're going to have to take the gearbox out of the shell, and then once we get that step done, we have to break into the gearbox to remove and replace the spring. My guess is that there's an M135 in here right now, which is obviously a little too hot for what we want to do. I have a Matrix M110 spring that I'm just pulling out of inventory. So because this is a last minute deal for him, we'll use this. And if he is noticing any decrease in performance over a couple of weeks, we can always swap out and put a proper Prometheus one in. We just don't have time to order it right now. But the process would be the same, regardless of the brand name of spring. So let's get to it. Sorry about the noise, guys. The furnace just kicked on. I'm down in the basement here at my workshop. So this particular AK, the battery and wiring is into the stock. So we're going to have to start by disassembling the stock section before we can free up the wiring. Normally, if you have an AK that runs a stick battery in the top cover, you can usually leave the stock as it is, because there isn't usually a bolt that comes through the back. But with this application, we're going to have to remove this. So let's just go ahead and start with that. And we can do this by simply pushing up on the lever and pulling the stock straight off. Okay? And as always, when you're taking internal components apart and external components, keep them in, or as organized as possible. I like to put internals on one side of the bench and externals on the other. That's just for me. And then we're looking down in here. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but there is a plate, much like when you have the crane stocks on the M4. So we'll need to remove the bolt which connects here to here. And that is a hex head. I find having this flashlight for flood or for spot, just something like that to get some light down into the crevices, excellent. Excellent. Very, very useful. So let's start. There we go. So we had that going through the stock into the body. Remove that, and now we can fish the wiring through. It's on the tight side. Okay. So now we have our stock adapter here, and as you can see, our wiring, it looks like someone's already, when they did this wire job, they came in and they doesn't look like they soldered these connections. So we'll have to see once we get inside the body here if it's worth breaking these connectors or if it's worth taking this entire stock piece off. Because as you can see in there, the fuse will not fit through there. So we'll get to that point when we get there. By the way, I'm working on pine by design because it's a very soft wood, so it's not going to scrape up any of these painted zinc metal parts. Just a heads up. Usually I put down a green cutting mat. That's also very good once you get into the gearbox. Okay, now that we have the stock off, let's look towards the front of the gun here. Now normally, if I was really wanting to disassemble this fully, I would have to remove the screw here, push the gas feed off to the front, remove the top half and all that kind of stuff. But thankfully with this design, all I have to do is disconnect the two halves. So we have these 4 screws here. that connect this receiving base, or the receiver itself, to this entire front end. And the great thing about this model is that the hop-up unit and the barrel are actually captured inside the front end. So I don't have to actually take any of this apart, which is excellent. What I will have to do, though, is remove the dust cover here and get inside here and remove some trays and things like that so that I can actually remove that up. And you can see here they used to have a stick battery, but when we swapped it over, we put a little aluminum tube in there just to stop the dust cover from rattling around when the gearbox cycles. I'll just get this over here for you. Okay, so what we're looking at here, we have our steel receiver, we have a plastic tray that runs along the top that holds your battery, and then we have a little spring system in here that controls the slide catch there. Sorry, slide catch. Well, in the real steel it's supposed to be the bolt. In here it's just, I guess you would call it the bolt cover. So we're going to start by disconnecting the spring and the bolt cover, and you can do that by simply taking this rod here and pulling it out of this button. That's the button that locks the cover on. And when we do that, we can literally just pull this rod out very slowly so we don't lose the spring somewhere in the workshop, and then we can pull this right out the side of the gun. I like to switch it on semi at this point just to keep this area clear. And if you need needle nose pliers, feel free to use them. I usually find that a very thin flathead screwdriver like this one here works very well. To just kind of pop that out like so. And then all we have to do now is very gently, without breaking anything, slide this out. And you can see I'm just kind of, let me zoom down here. So I've taken the rod, I'm just pulling it out like that, so that we don't lose any of our, there we go. And then we can just keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, so that's our assembly right here. And then you have your spring. So essentially what happens is this rod goes through, loops through the body, goes through the spring like so, and then into the front of the gun. And then when you pull the bolt back, it catches that spring. And that's where you get your spring tension. So we'll keep this as one unit, and we'll deal with that later. Next, we can see our hop-up in here. Oh, and we have a little spring in here as well. Let's not lose that. I'll show you where that goes on the reassembly. Next, we want to remove the hop-up lever. It's a small Phillips. And all we have to do is remove the tab that you actually get your fingers on to adjust the hop-up, which is nice. We don't have to actually mess with the hop-up unit. We just need to get rid of this little tab right here to make clearance for this whole thing to come up and out. So, like so. That's loose. Go in with a pair of needle nose pliers and just lift it out. Be careful not to lose this screw here. It's extremely hard to find a replacement. Been there, done that. The next area where we're going to focus our attention is right here. We're going to remove this screw. Sorry guys, trying to work the camera here and get the tools going at the same time. Okay, and now we can just very simply lift this whole cover off. And this is just a piece of plastic here on this model. Alright, so now we have the top of our gearbox exposed. We see the hop-up unit. Now the great thing about this is I didn't even have to adjust the hop-up. So whatever this was set to before, the optic, the hop-up itself, all of this is going to come off in one piece. So technically, we shouldn't lose our zero. Now, obviously that'll depend a little bit on the clearances that each one of these bodies have. I'm sure since it's a Jingong, it's not going to be as tight tolerance as, say, Classic Army, etc. But it will be better than having to remount everything from scratch. Now we're going to turn the gun over, and we have these four, I'm going to call them front end to receiver screws. They're just regular Phillips heads. We're going to take these 4 out.